you're a home buyer, somebody or a young person looking to buy a home, you need a bit of a reset.
There is a possibility on the other side of this that inflation could actually be quite low.
Welcome back to Real Estate Mindset. Today's video is going to be absolutely bonkers. Now, the data is in, and we have new data to review now that is spelling an imminent recession that's going to hit us no later than 2025, as predicted by the Federal Reserve. Now, if you're not interested in looking at historical data and historical trends that are clearly spelling out for us that an incoming recession is yet to hit us yet, then this video may not be for you. But if you're someone that wants to plan for the worst, you can hope for the best. But if you want to plan for the worst and potentially get a deal of your dreams, then you may want to pay attention to this video, because something that I'm going to do in addition to reviewing this data and listening to testimonial from people that are way smarter than me is we're going to ask the question, why? Why haven't we gone into recession yet? And I think you guys are going to find the information that I'm going to share with you extremely shocking and valuable. If you find value in this video, do me a favor, you guys, hit bonkers below. Literally type in BONKERS, hit bonkers below. But either way, I hope you find value in the video, and I hope you enjoy. I'm going to tell you guys right now, we're going to cover a lot of data, but we're going to start by reviewing this article from Business Insider titled, "The Fed's Rate Cut Projections Are Pointing to an Imminent Recession, Economist Says." A couple more bullet points here. In previous quote unquote soft landings, which is a term they've always used, by the way, the Fed usually cuts rates by 75 basis points. But currently, and here's the big kicker, they're forecasting a 150 basis point reduction by 2025. So normally, hey, soft landing's coming, we'll do 75 basis points, but oh my gosh, impending doom coming. Well, we don't know exactly when we're going to cut rates, but when we do, it's going to be 150 basis points. So that's a huge red flag. Now, bullet point number 3, stock investors are eagerly awaiting the central bank's pivot to looser monetary policy. As always, everything will be linked in my description. You guys are going to love the data that we cover. Now, this starts, the Federal Reserve's interest rate forecasts are flashing warning signs of a recession just around the corner. The Fed doesn't want to say this explicitly because they want to boil the frog alive. They can't tell us the truth. Part of the job of the Fed is to lie to us. If you don't agree with me, comment below and tell me why I'm wrong. This goes on. But it is actually saying, in not so many words, that a recession is very likely coming our way. Despite the Fed's optimistic forecast of 2.1% GDP growth and a 4% unemployment rate, Roseberg sees officials predicting a sharp drop in median federal funds rate and a recession indicator. And I'm going to show you guys how fast GDP can actually drop. The Fed anticipates the median federal funds rate will drop 150 basis points, meaning they will need to stimulate the economy by 2025. And they will need to drop it even more by the end of 2026 to 3.125%, which is a total of 225 basis points, which would obviously indirectly affect mortgage interest rates as well. Now, take a look at this data. Now, here's the case in point to this article and why they're saying, hey, if you think this time is different, you are crazy. Now, Rosenberg said in the past instances of a soft landing in the economy, the Fed typically reduces rates by 75 basis points, as seen in 1987, 1995, 1998, and 2019. The only exception was September 1984 to August 1986, when rates saw deeper cuts following a 60% collapse in oil prices. So outside of that one episode, any move down in federal funds rate during the post-World War II era, anywhere close to 150 basis points, only occurred because of one thing he wrote, and that is recession or economic turmoil. Now take a look at this chart. This chart is insane, you guys. So this is going back to August 1st, 2019, and this is measuring how much the S&P 500 dropped. Very, very crazy. So starting August 1st of 2019, the S&P dropped 24%. September 18th, 2007, the S&P dropped from peak to bottom 55%. Imagine 55% of your money being wiped away clean and you don't have it anymore. Also, January 3rd of 2001, S&P dropped a shocking 52%. But if you want to go further back in history, it's very interesting to note the drops are less. You can see in the 2000s massive drops, but later on the drops weren't as bad. So do you think this is going to be a bad drop? Do you think it's going to be an okay drop? Now in 1989, July 7th, S&P dropped only 9.2%. 1981, 22%, 1973, 45%, 1969, 25%, and 1960, it dropped 7% again. We're just talking about historical data. This article goes on. As the Fed has shifted focus to combating recession, stock investors are eagerly anticipating a series of rate cuts starting this year. But they go on to say, be careful with what you wish for. In recessions, interest rates, bond yields, and equity prices all go down in tandem. In other words, what it's saying is prepare right now to potentially get a deal of your dreams, because during a recession, ain't no one got no money because layoffs are around every single corner. So in other words, plan right now to get ahead in the near future while you still can. And what do I mean by planning ahead? Okay, a huge thing is to save your money. Americans have horrible spending habits. And if people would just tweak a couple things here and there, such as subscriptions and going out to eat, a lot of people can get through potentially future difficult times. If I would have just changed my life 6 months before I lost everything during the GFC, I would be in a completely different situation right now versus losing everything and missing out on deals of my dream. That happened to me last time. But let me give you some additional perspective from someone else that can clearly see the economy is in terrible shape. So now we're going to listen to this video, because the question is, why haven't we gone into recession already? Take a listen.
The debt looks at like $34 trillion. It's going to be $35 trillion by May. Your reaction?
Absolutely. We are on the wrong trajectory. Just last week, the Congressional Budget Office came out with a new report showing that we are headed towards record spending levels, record deficit levels, record debt levels, record interest payments. The list goes on and on. We are on a terrible trajectory in terms of our fiscal finances. But I will say that the Fiscal Responsibility Act that was just signed into place was the biggest piece of deficit reduction legislation that we've seen in over a decade.
I will point out that the Fiscal Responsibility Act, although good, is probably way too late to make a difference. And I'm going to show you guys the deficit spending here in a minute. But, you know, again, at least, and I did want to acknowledge, some people, a handful of people, are at least trying to stop the bad spending habits of the U.S. government. I mean, my gosh, everyone can see this, right? Comment below. Am I crazy? Let's get back into the video.
Of this debt that we are facing with the interest on the debt alone costing upwards of $1 trillion. The White House announced $5.5 trillion of new and higher taxes in President Biden's massive $7.3 trillion budget. Is that the only way to get out of here? Higher taxes, as well as stopping this spending? Progressive policy group American Prospect attacked the Committee for Responsible Budget's analysis of Biden's massive budget. They claim your criticism is bad faith. You want to cut Social Security, Maya. Your response to that and the response to getting out of this debt?
Yeah, such is the life of being a bipartisan organization in Washington, right? We're always getting hit by all sides because they don't like that our focus isn't on either political agenda. It is about how you reduce the debt. And there are three basic ways you do that. You raise taxes, which the Biden budget does a lot. You cut spending, which the Biden budget doesn't do, and you grow the economy, which is something that we need to look at in all the policies that we're focusing on. But the problem with the Biden budget is it raised taxes a lot, and then it turns around and it spends a lot of new money. Right now, the economy is in dire need of some fiscal responsibility. right? We have strong enough growth that we can accommodate. This is the moment where we should be looking at how to bring the debt down, not cutting taxes, not raising spending. I know that's what everybody wants, but the real area, and Maria, you have known this for as long as anybody, we are ignoring the entitlement programs. The other thing that we saw in the congressional budget report is that both Social Security and Medicare are headed towards insolvency. We have two front runners for president who are promising not to fix those programs. Actually, I'm sorry, that's not fair. The Biden budget does talk about Medicare, and so it makes some real starts there. On Social Security, nobody has a plan to fix Social Security. And if we do nothing, we're going to have across the board benefit cuts that are very large and hurt everybody in that program. That's what we need to think about, how to fix these two big entitlement programs that, along with interest on the debt, are growing all the spending and the growth in the budget.
So, do you guys think that we should raise taxes? Do you think that the economy is growing? I mean, how do we get out of the situation that we're in with the out of control spending habits? Now, personally, I think, like she mentioned, fiscal responsibility, how the government is spending tax dollars, or rather how they're printing money. Because remember, they're taxing us by printing money. It's a future tax that we have to pay. So again, I'm going to say one primary reason that we have not gone into recession yet is the overwhelming amount of deficit spending. In other words, you guys, the money printing never stopped. We just stopped getting it deposited into our bank accounts as consumers. That's what stopped. If you don't believe me, take a look at the deficit so far this year. $828 billion in deficit. And this is a primary reason that you're looking at right here on why we have not gone into recession. And the deficit's not getting better, you guys. In healthy economies, the deficit will just go down. In fact, we don't even need a deficit. The deficit is getting worse. It's worse by 15% year over year, which means the economy is not really doing great at all. And if you watch my channel, you're going to want to get used to seeing this chart right here, which is, again, what I'm boiling down the inflation to. Look at the deficit in 2023 alone, this great year, robust economy. We had growth in GDP of 1.6 trillion. The deficit in 2023 was 1.7 trillion, which means without the deficit spending, or rather, let's just say this, all of the GDP growth in 2023 was a result of deficit spending. And just to put this in perspective, the deficit spending in 2023 exceeded 2009, which was only, I say only, $1.42 trillion. You guys, here's the thing. We are already in recession. If we get real about this, okay, we don't have the deficit. We don't have that money. That's not real, okay? We're already in recession, but people can't see that. They can't see that because, again, GDP is great, right? And if you don't want to look at deficit, if you don't want to look at these warning signs, at least look at this. The 2 in the 10 yield curve inversion. This is a huge indicator that we are not in recession yet. Everything that I went over with you guys is before recession has started. The government has been keeping us out of recession this whole time when really we need to go into recession so we can heal. They're putting a Band-Aid over a bullet hole. We are massively inverted in the yield curve, which means the 2-year is higher than the 10-year. We've been inverted for almost the longest time in history, a sustained inversion. This is crazy. And you guys, here's the thing. It does make sense that we've been inverted that long and preventing a recession for 2 reasons. Number 1, the overwhelming amount of money printing through the lockdowns. And number 2, the fact that the money printing never stopped. And so because it's never stopped, all that it's doing is making the bubble bigger and bigger and bigger. And as a result of that, I believe that the bubble bursting is going to be more violent and more widespread than it had to be if the government would have just let us bust instead of printing money. And the question is when are we going to enter recession? Well, according to the Fed, it's going to be 2025. According to the yield curve, the soonest is going to be the end of 2024. But what I wanted to show you guys is how quickly GDP can plummet. We went from a GDP growth in Q4, and look on the screen, Q4 of 2021 we had GDP of 7%. You see that. 7% GDP growth, Q4 of 2021, followed by negative 2%. That is a swing of 9% in just one quarter. So think about how quickly things can change and really put things in perspective. It's not too late to save your money, to rebudget, to work on your purchasing power, and level yourself up to weather the storm and potentially get the deal of your dreams. Now, if you don't want to be cautious, if you're filthy rich, so be it. But if you want to look at historical data, everything's going to be linked in my description. If you want to learn how to increase your purchasing power, I also have a free home buying course. But what I'm trying to say is patience is a virtue. The dollar is defying gravity. Think about these things. Now, other than that, if you guys are out there investing in real estate, you guys already know I wish you luck and I hope you win.